Hi, Juno News. Alexander Brown here, back for another episode. Thank you for joining us. I'm the director of the National Citizens Coalition. I'm a writer, campaigner, communicator. I'd love for you to take advantage of our promo code. Go to junonews.com/not sorry for 20% off. Young conservatism, the youth movement, a hard time to be a young Canadian. Young professionals are being forced to reckon with decisions like in Cowichan that echo the communism their parents escaped, to wonder if the house they already can't even afford would even stay their own. We have youth unemployment still hitting new highs, showing no signs of slowing down as the liberals and liberal lights remain stubborn in fixing immigration or unlocking the true conditions for a healthy economy and per capita growth production. And how are our politicians spending their time? They're making a mess on the trade front and feeling none of the ramifications placed on Canada's young and working class. They may even be attempting to run back another elbows up election and really solidify that generational screw job. Ellie Canton Nantel joins us today to talk these generational divides, this problem of doing right by our young people, this burgeoning youth conservatism, because kids don't feel heard, they don't feel represented. Under 30s, under 40s, it's rough out there, and it's not getting better. We're lying to ourselves if we say that it is. Legacy media pundits can spin this one way, can spin the Carney start. It hasn't been good. Provinces like Ontario, they have to be better. Provinces like British Columbia, where I'm recording this episode, total dumpster fire. The house I can't afford, if I ever pull it off, it might not be mine. It might get, fee simple might not matter. And so Ellie is a prominent young political journalist, columnist, commentator. You may know him from his time previously at True North. Thrilled to have him on. Join us for this talk. And first, a word from our sponsor.
Macamee College. So, are you tired of politicians growing government while your freedoms shrink? Then don't just complain. Take the lead. Our partners today, Macamee College, and their applied politics and public affairs program is for freedom-minded Canadians who want to hold the government accountable. In just 2 years, through online evening courses, you'll get the applied skills to run campaigns, organize grassroots movements, and shape policy. You'll get hands-on training in your community and with the party of your choice, so you graduate ready for real change. Now, maybe it's you, maybe it's someone you know, maybe it's your son or daughter, maybe it's your friend who's passionate about politics. Here is a chance to fast track your career into making an impact. Plus, anyone who subscribes through our link and they are successful in enrolling in this course gets a $500 Juno News scholarship towards your education, because we need more small government leaders standing up for freedom, standing against big government overreach. Intakes are in September and January. Don't wait. It's time to lead. Use the link in the description today. Check it out over at candicemalcolm.com/Macamee. That's MAKAMI.
Ellie Canton Nantel joins the show. Ellie is a prominent independent journalist, columnist, commentator, and content creator. He's worked for The Hub, formerly True North, The Post Millennial, and as a political staffer on Parliament Hill. Ellie, thanks for being here.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me on, Alex.
Of course. Now you launched Ellie Canton Nantel Media with the quote, "Canada's media landscape sucks. There's no other way to put it." On the role filled by many in the subsidized legacy press, we very much agree. Let's expand on this media landscape that sucks. Why does it? And what are you doing differently?
Yeah, it's true. It sucks. Like that's like this literally like came to mind. I was like, how am I going to present this new venture to people? I got to come out. I got to be bold. And I was like, well, this is kind of why I'm doing this. It's because it sucks. You have three giant legacy media companies, CBC, CTV, and Global News, who are basically all the same. They present news in a way that, in my view, is biased towards liberals, biased towards, more importantly, left-wing causes, especially on social issues. And they're also places where conservatives aren't given a voice. The example I always give is you turn on Power Politics. And the whole idea behind a show like that is you're supposed to have someone from all the parties. And the people that these shows typically have, not always, there's a couple good people, but usually they'll have the conservative strategist who is a lobbyist who, when you actually meet them or even when you see them on TV, aren't conservative in any way, shape, or form. The only thing that makes them conservative is to support low taxes for the top 1%, because it means that their big lobbyist salary is taxed less. And so a lot of conservatives feel very underrepresented in legacy media, because they don't want to hear from grassroots conservatives. And they always put on grassroots leftists. And that's not a healthy media landscape. You look at the UK, it's not like that. In the UK, they always have grassroots conservative and grassroots leftists on programs debating. It's really a marketplace of ideas. It's the same thing in the US. You look at like Abby Phillip, for example. Clips from that show often go on X, because you see the passionate argument, because it allows, even on CNN, diversity of opinion. Unfortunately, we don't have anything like that in Canada. We have the legacy media and the elites on legacy media and these conservative strategists on legacy media. And then you have the independent lane, which is almost all conservative, because those people refuse to go on independent media because they look down at an independent media. So having worked in a bit of, I've worked for conservative media, and the last place I worked was a bit more establishment-like, even though it was independent and proudly refused to take government money. I've kind of had my feet in both worlds, and I'm trying to bring them together. Let's actually have real conversations with credible people, respectable people, and let's try to improve the situation, because it's one thing to complain. It's another thing to actually do something about it.
No, I agree. And you have to present arguments in a professional way and speak to good people and put an electable face on the issues that you care about, a professional face on the issues you care about. That marketplace of ideas, especially on the right, is increasingly, it's very conservative. It's where we all go. And I think part of what Juno's doing, part of what you're doing, guys like myself, it's about raising the bar in independent media.
Mm-hmm.
So it looks great. It sounds great. It in some ways is replacing these old streams. We're certainly reaching more people than those in the subsidized media, and we don't need a ton of help. And then with that doesn't come expectations that you're going to play nice with the people who are kicking you the dough. And so you are doing terrific work at the moment on that Substack on YouTube. I know you're a must follow for myself and many others. I wanted to highlight your latest episode with the great Jamie Sarkonic. I love Jamie's work. She's with the National Post.
Yeah, she's amazing.
Yeah, she's quickly becoming to me like I told her to update her biography recently because she just calls herself a columnist. I said, no, you're an important journalist. You are not just shooting the wounded as some columnists are known to do. It's like you are digging up these really important stories. Now, in this episode, the two of you are sounding the alarm that Canada's justice system has turned into a woke two-tier affair. Tell us more about that reporting.
Well, yeah. So, I think a lot of people who are on X or even Juno News readers, because Juno News has actually done amazing reporting on this, will have seen interesting cases where you have someone like an Indian immigrant committing a sex crime and getting a lighter sentence, or an Indigenous person committing a horrible crime and getting a reduced sentence, or some Black person getting a reduced sentence because of supposed racism in society. And a lot of people, I think, have just come to the conclusion that this is just because the system is woke and the judges are woke. And it's very true that a lot of the judges today are woke, because Justin Trudeau appointed Liberal Party donors, very, very liberal people, appointed DEI candidates to the bench. And I did some reporting on that when I was at True North. But there's another part of this, is that it's not just a couple bad actors. The whole system is built this way. You have three consequential precedents that have been baked into the system. The Gladue ruling in the 90s that give Indigenous people access to lighter sentences in the name of reconciliation. You have the impact of race and culture assessments that came in the 2010s that give Black people an opportunity to have a lighter sentence. And since 2013, immigrants are able to get lighter sentences in order to not trigger automatic deportation without appeal, which at the time of the ruling was 2 years. Now it's a 6-month sentence. And, you look at some of the original cases where this may have been applied, like Gladue for the Indigenous, it was a domestic abuse case. Sometimes there will be someone who will die in a domestic abuse situation, because especially if it's a woman, which it wasn't that case, because they're defending themselves against their abusive husband and they kill them accidentally. But or the immigrant case for it was someone who was trafficking marijuana. So you may be able to say, yeah, but it's just a drug offense. But no, it starts there, but then it gets escalated to the point where you have an indigenous person who sexually assaults a 12 or 16-year-old girl, I forget now from the top of my head, and gets a lighter sentence. You have immigrants that commit sex crimes, and they're like, the judge says, you can stay in Canada. We'll make it easier for you to stay in Canada. Like, this is incredible. And it's not just a couple of woke judges, it's the whole system that was now built this way. We were sounding the alarm because we think something has to be done to change that. It's insane that this is happening every single day in our justice system.
It is. And Jamie's done great work as well. I've had some episodes on trucking, for example, where she's really showcasing that there's some incredibly dodgy people here who then get these incredibly dodgy sentences. And they're all temps. They're not, if they're not even providing favorable sentences to some high quality diplomat or someone who offers real value. These are replaceable cogs who were never given
Mm-hmm.
proper background assessments, who are here and who are causing trouble and are often on expired visas. It should be the quickest yank in history. It's, the World Series is on right now. When the reliever's in trouble, you go to the bullpen, you get them out of there. These are guys who are coming here causing trouble. They need to go, and they need to go immediately. And the fact that they're getting to stay as if they were offering any value in the first place is deeply offensive. And I'd
If
be
I could just
remiss.
add to that, Alex,
Yeah, please.
it also enables the behavior. There was this was on
Yeah,
social media about a month ago, and it was a international student from India who was on Snapchat, and he was filming himself drunk driving and speeding at night, I believe in Brampton.
I
And I'm
saw
telling
that.
myself,
Yeah.
like, not only are you in Canada on a student visa thinking that that behavior is okay, but you also think that it's okay to then post it to the entire world that you're doing this. Like, this is where we're at right now, where these people, instead of being under this idea that, oh, I'm a visitor to this incredible country, I have to behave, I have to be on best behavior, which is how I would feel if I was studying at one of these new elite universities in the Middle East, because they're opening a lot of really nice universities in the Middle East. For example, if I was studying there, I would be on my best behavior because I knew if I
Yeah.
did one thing wrong, I'd be kicked out. But instead, these people not only know that they can break the rules, but they feel comfortable enough posting themselves breaking the rule on social media. That to me is another case of Canada being broken.
I mean, if you went to Singapore right now and left your gum on the ground, they're sending you home. They're putting you on a
Yeah.
plane. We do drunk driving through Brampton or through Caledon, Dufferin County, and it's no big deal. Go on to Instagram right now. I know you're popular on Instagram as well. You'll just openly see like immigration fraud consultants like in your reel. It's just,
Yes.
hey, I'll smuggle you across the border. LOL. Hashtag immigration fraud. And it's been going on for ever since they spiked it. Now, we could go on immigration forever, but I'd be remiss if I didn't ask you about recent work of yours in relation to Charlie Kirk. His
Sure.
shocking death, it obviously meant so much to so many. I know he's had a large influence on your work. Tell us about what he means to young conservatism and what he's meant to who you are and what you do.
For sure. Well, Charlie Kirk was not just your typical political influencer or even kind of political operative or political person. He was almost like a larger than life figure. I mean, this guy was
Yeah.
incredible. This guy was uh, a product of meritocracy, a product of hard work. He, had to go and beg for money, kind of like I had to do with my organization. And, he started with a very, very modest budget, and he was able to, I believe it was something like 50,000 US dollars is what he started with. And he was able to build that into an organization that made almost $100 million annually. Big, big conferences, bringing 20,000 people together in Arizona and headlining conservatism. He's part of what made conservatism cool. He modernized the conservative movement. He told the Republican establishment that was getting more and more out of touch with young people, no, these are the issues you have to fight, and you have to fight them hard.
Yeah.
But also with Charlie, what was so incredible was he was such a man of principle. He was very, very well informed. He had read all the good books. He was a Christian, and you could tell he was genuinely a good person, and that his conservatism was not based on what's edgy. It was actually based on realness, on common sense, on common values. And I just think that made him such an admirable person, because you could tell he was really, really deep into his convictions when he would argue. And you could tell that, he was worried about certain trends, and he would address them very, very well. And, it's a huge loss that he's gone. Personally, I've looked up to him. I was like, I want to try to, with my resources, to try to get something like this here. And what was very difficult for me was, I mean, I wrote this on Substack, they killed my hero. Like, what do you do when the person you look up to the most gets shot?
Yeah.
So I was quite impacted by that. The answer, of course, is you double down and you don't let the left bully you into silence. But it was, I think, shocking for a lot of us. And it's a big hole because, as I said, this man was not just a conservative influencer or conservative speaker. This guy was a larger than life figure who's had a really deep rooted conviction, deep faith, and just overall well-informed conservative philosophy. He was the leader of the Gen Z conservative movement, to be quite honest.
Very much so, and I think filled an important void as well, which is he obviously, not only was he housebroken as a pundit and having a terrific organization, which to the uninitiated, they have like an entire campus. Like he started with that $50,000, and it is now you go there and it's all multiple buildings, and he was always operating out of one that was kept secret so people wouldn't know about it for security reasons. But he was worried about the far right. Like he would criticize the far left, but he was worried about, if I don't help provide some leadership here, if I don't put a congenial face on things and force people to debate on merit, this can get darker. This can get more difficult. And so much of what I do now in my work professionally is worry about our young people and worry about that pull of alienation. These are folks who aren't being offered opportunities, are working aged. Like I'm speaking at a university on Thursday this week, along with Jeff Russ and Caroline Elliott, because we know that upward social mobility, housing, growing cultural concerns and national cohesion, young and youth unemployment, they're staying not so good. In the case of unemployment at record highs, these are kids who aren't receiving the urgent care that they deserve. Now, as a prominent young figure on this quote unquote new right, where do you wish to see politicians and parties better in tune with the needs of young people, young conservatives, and federally is the party more in tune than the other ones?
I just want to pick up quickly on what you said about the far right. Yes,
Yeah.
what Charlie was doing too, he was positive because there was kind of three men that have been influencing young conservatives. You had Nick Fuentes, who's a self-proclaimed incel, who's a Nazi, and I'm not afraid to say that. He's a racist. He's a really demonic person, and now he's on the rise. Andrew Tate, who just is a pimp and is a pig. And those two resonated because, they actually did pick up on the problems. My issue is not the problems they identified. My issue is the horrible solutions they have to legitimate issues. And the third one was Charlie Kirk, who actually had biblical, conservative, productive solutions to these real issues. And I really respected the fact that Charlie would call those people out. To answer your question, the Conservative Party has never been at a better place under Pierre Poilievre. Pierre Poilievre is the best leader the Conservative Party has ever had, and I'm willing to say that. He understands young people far better than the previous leaders. And you see that through the fact that Pierre Poilievre is not just an economic conservative, he's also a real conservative, he's a cultural conservative. And his MPs, he's allowed people into his caucus, like Jamil Giovanni, who's now doing an incredible campus tour, like Aaron Gunn, like Matt Strauss, like Roman Baber, like Andrew Lawton. These are real conservatives who would have probably not been invited into the Conservative Party under other leaders, and they've been allowed in. Not only that, but they've been allowed to speak their minds. And I think that's really good for young conservatives, because here's the thing: Gen Z conservatives, yes, it is true that the economic situation has brought some Gen Z to vote for the Conservative Party. But when you meet a Gen Z conservative, they are not this economically conservative, socially progressive type. In fact, I have a poll just in front of me. Only 6% of Canadians meet the economic conservative, cultural progressive, the type of person that CBC will put on Power and Politics as the conservative expert. In reality, most people are either economic progressive and cultural conservative or economic and cultural conservatives. And I think the party needs to continue doing this because young people see they've witnessed themselves the woke ideology in their schools and in their campuses when they're asked to do land acknowledgement, when they're asked to state their pronouns, even though it's so obvious that they're a man or a woman. They see it with immigration. They see, how immigration has changed the landscape of Canada. They've seen how immigration has raised housing prices. They've seen how immigration, and especially the TFW abuses, has led to job shortages. So for young conservatives, they're looking for a return to the good old Canada, the Canada of Stephen Harper and even of other prime ministers before that, where we didn't have everything being broken, where we didn't have wokeness everywhere, where there was more common sense. And I think the Conservative Party moving forward needs to not abandon that social and cultural conservatism. It actually needs to double down. And I think it's doing a good job on the immigration front. We've seen really good conservative messaging on immigration. But I do also think we need on DEI, Vincent Neil Ho, who's a conservative MP, Gen Z, I believe, from Newmarket, from Richmond Hill, doing a great job on that. And we just need to see more and more and more of that, because that's how we will build something productive and avoid a situation in the United States where we have young men in Canada feeling abandoned and then turning to more fringe ideals, because these are the only people who are willing to address their issues, even if their ideas are terrible.
No, I agree. And I've been on the other end of it with those guys where I've said, like, hey, this is trouble. Folks are trying to fix immigration. I can appreciate that you're upset. And you see it going to a potentially deep and dark place. Like, it is a version of a radical leftism. It's a race maximalism. It's not healthy. And if you actually talk to young people right now, even the ones who aren't feeling that pull, they don't want to talk about austerity. They don't want to talk about this kind of gate-kept idea of conservatism. They don't want to talk like maybe a tokenized pundit on the legacy media who used to work for a conservative campaign. They want to talk about culture. They don't want to have some grand culture war. It doesn't mean that they're American adjacent or Trumpy or MAGA-ish or whatever pejorative gets thrown their way, and that it just isn't appropriate. They want to talk about immigration. They want to talk about crime and drugs and squalor and a lack of meaning. They want to feel oriented towards something that looked like the Canada they grew up in, or that people tell them about, because they're not seeing it. And it's so frustrating to me to see, as like the elbows up continued trade dispute, we have instigations from Ontario's premier. They're not impacting those who are engaged in that. They are impacting these kids. They are impacting working age Canadians.
Yes.
This may be satisfying to liberal boomers and our well-fed consultant class, but not those struggling or who have to live with the repercussions. I know Doug Ford's actions certainly come to mind. You joined us at Project Ontario, the event back on September 30th. And to the unaware, that's an assembly of legacy conservative groups, concerned citizens, campaigners who want to see more principled conservatism out of a Ford government and an inner circle currently under investigation and scrutiny, perhaps for the lack thereof of principles. Did you see or hear anything that could be described as radical right or Yahoo-esque, as the premier and his camp insinuated when you were at Project Ontario?
So I actually wrote about this on Substack because he did call them radical right and Yahoos, which was what he previously called those who opposed his lockdowns. And I just thought that was a very ill-advised, very disappointing response. First of all, this part of this criticism is a criticism I've always had for the overuse of the word, is when you overuse a word, it loses its meaning. And I think especially now where we have an actual rising radical right, especially in the United States, but a little bit in Canada too, to call mainstream conservatives radical right is actually very dangerous. But second of all, it's also not productive, because Project Ontario, I think there was a good turnout, don't get me wrong, but it wasn't like we filled a nice event space at a museum. We didn't fill an arena. And the fact that they reacted so negatively to school choice, to better healthcare with access to the private sector, to merit-based hiring, really shows you that they know they're not doing something right. And I'll just share this little thing I ran into, and I'm not going to say his name because I always keep these conversations private, but I ran into a senior Doug Ford person in Calgary this summer. And I was still at the hub, and the hub was running the Project Ontario pieces. And this individual comes up to me and he says, like, we was really, really upset that we were running these Project Ontario pieces. And I told him, well, maybe if you guys governed differently, there wouldn't be a need for Project Ontario. I mean, I think it's ridiculous that we have in Ontario a government that has not done a lot to address wokeness in school, not done a lot to address DEI. In fact, given lots of money to DEI, including to a group that was previously chaired by a woman named Kike Ojo-Thompson, who was accused of bullying a principal who later committed suicide. And the government gave her money even after the fact. That, won't do anything major on healthcare. It's just not good enough. It's not good enough. And I think conservatives, I don't think we need to get rid of Doug Ford or, I don't think, but I do think it warrants us saying, hello, please, we deserve a bit better. We demand better, and we should demand better. And I think that they shouldn't react this way when people demand better. I think they should actually listen to the ideas. But if they don't want to do that, then they should just ignore and say, I don't know, like Doug Ford should have simply said, I don't know what Project Ontario is. I'm focused on governing the province. And I think it would have been a perfect answer.
Yeah, instead it was a kind of Streisand effect. By drawing attention to it, it becomes. I was thankful for the publicity because on the topic of young people, and to tie it back in, there's no worse province to be a young person than Ontario. Housing starts are off a cliff. Immigration is first and foremost as an effect felt there. And, healthcare wait times are getting worse and it's very expensive. And what allows you, it's a really lousy place to be in your 20s or 30s and trying to make a go of it and not seeing upward social mobility. And
yes. And I'm an example of that. I'm just finishing up my university degree right now in Ottawa. But in the next 2 to 3 years, I'm out. I'm not staying in Ontario. I will either be going out to Alberta or be moving to Washington, D.C. in the United States if I can find a way to get a visa. Unless you get a job on Bay Street, or unless you go work in your parents' business, or maybe you want to work in Ottawa as a staffer, there's no reason to stay in Ontario. There is not. I find it so depressing being here. Like it's just not a place to be. When I land in Alberta, I always as soon as I get off the plane, I
breathe
just feel
the free air.
This positive energy. It's just amazing being out there. And I wish the Ford government would, take that into consideration and try to make Ontario this place where people want to go. It's possible. Ontario is a great place geographically. You've already got big cities. You've got a lot to offer. And I would tell them that, if you guys want to continue getting the support of young people, try to do something about this, because or else you're just sleeping as this big issue keeps on growing. I don't know a single person who is Gen Z who's passionate about staying in Ontario, with the exceptions of 2 friends, one that works on Bay Street as a banker and the other one who works on Bay Street as a junior lawyer. These are the only 2 people I know who are passionate about being in Ontario because they've got good jobs. Everyone else wants out.
No, and it's a real thing, and we can choose to ignore it or we can tell the truth about it. I spoke about it on stage, which the polling dynamics of young people in Ontario. In Ontario, young Canadians in general, it's like everyone has their eye up on the door. Everyone has one foot out of it if somebody came offering. So maybe, don't just focus on gerontocracy. Maybe don't just do the elbows up thing. Maybe get it together on housing and cohesion and safety and give these kids a fighting chance, because they're going to want out.
They will. Absolutely. I just want to say something else to that. There was a poll done at the start of the year, and I wrote an article about this for the Hub, which ended up being one of the most read pieces ever on their website. And it was titled, "Half of My Generation Wants Canada to Become the 51st State. Here's Why." And there was a poll done by Ipsos, and they asked young people, if the United States gave you U.S. citizenship and gave you, converted your assets to U.S. dollars, would you accept Canada becoming the 51st state, or would you vote for it? And almost half of young Canadians were saying yes. And just 2 weeks ago, I was in Toronto. I was speaking at a conference, and the amount of I want to move to the US, I was there. I ran into a friend who I had not seen in 3 years, and he's just wrapping up his law school. And he was telling me, I'm applying for jobs in the US. The next day I speak at this conference with a bunch of young people, and some of them tell me they want to move to the US. And then I go and meet another friend who has US citizenship, and he says, oh yeah, I'm going to go relocate to the US. And then I go and meet one last friend. I'm very social when I try to be in Toronto. I try to
No
not
kidding.
stay too long because I don't like Toronto, but I do like to see my friends when I'm there.
Yeah.
Last friend I go for coffee with, he's like, "Oh yeah, I just got my O1 visa, which is a type of professional visa you can get to go to the US." So it's like in one trip, I just had so many people
Yeah.
being like, we want to move to the United States. And they want to move to the United States despite Trump, which the boomers are horrified by, despite this supposed gun violence, because, it turns out we actually have a lot of gun violence in Canada too.
Yeah.
At least in the US, you can protect yourself. And, they just look at the US, they see the growing economy, they see that AI is going to actually bring a lot of wealth into the United States on top of the wealth that tech has already brought in. And then they look at Canada, where we have the 70 cents dollar, where our future looks more and more grim every single day. And a lot of people are saying, no, no, thank you. And I can 100% sympathize with why people want to leave.
Yeah. And one party's listening to that at the moment with campus tours and cultivating young voters, and the other
Yes,
should, no matter if you're federal or what province you're in. Ontario could do a much better job. Ellie, leave us with some links. Where can people find your work?
for sure. We'll go to Ellie Cantin Nantel. That's ELIECANTINNANTEL.com. That's my Substack. You can subscribe there. And on there, you'll find a link to my YouTube channel. I'm on YouTube with my name. Subscribe to my YouTube channel as well. And yeah, consider getting a paid subscription. I like Juno News. I also refuse to take any government money because I don't think that you can be I don't think it's right to take government money. So yeah, go and support Juno News and go and support myself and go support Alex's work. And that's how we can build an alternative and we can build a better Canada is by supporting independent media.
I love it. Economies of scale. We're building them. Support us. Support Ellie. Thanks so much. Thanks for joining us.